Alright, guys, time to talk another classic film. Now, this isn't my favorite in the franchise. People who know me or been watching for a decent amount probably know that Texas Chain Saw Massacre 2 is my favorite in the series. But this is an absolute classic, this first original Texas Chainsaw. And I'm not too big on a lot of Toby Hooper's work, but this is a masterpiece. Like, even though it's not a film that I would personally put in my top 10, like, horror films of all time, this is a masterpiece film. Like, I don't think there's any denying that, like, for anybody. But obviously, directed by Toby Hooper and Kim Henkel and Hooper both co-wrote the script together. And just being, like, the first of when we think of all, like, the slasher icons, we have Michael Myers, we have Jason, we have Freddy, then we have Leatherface. Always gets thrown in there, which I could see, but I don't really consider this a slasher movie. Like, maybe retroactively, like after the whole slasher boom in the 80s, and with the sequels and stuff after this. But this first film, never looked at it as a slasher movie. And I think one of the biggest things this movie has going for it is just for, especially for 1973, 74, because they filmed it in 73, didn't come out for like a year or something like that afterwards, is just how raw this movie looks, how grainy and grimy, and like it almost feels like a documentary, which I hear people say a lot about this movie, and it's true. Like, this movie feels so real. Now, I know they had a lot of like problems like filming this. Not many, like, not really problems like from a technical standpoint, but just kind of like with Evil Dead. They had to battle a lot of shit making that movie. Same with this. Like, just hearing some of like the actors and actresses and direct and Toby in interviews and stuff talk about just the severe heat in Texas that they were dealing with. I remember Edwin Neal, who plays the hitchhiker, was talking about a deleted scene, and it was after the hitchhiker's killed at the end, and he was laying on the fucking asphalt on the street, and his face, like his skin, he felt it being cooked from how hot it was. Like, the heat they had to deal with for the whole time of shooting this. And Gunnar Hansen, who gives such an iconic performance here as Leatherface, he couldn't change clothes like during shooting for like the whole shoot because they were afraid of, I think it was like the way they got the color of his shirt to look that way. They didn't want a chance like changing it, and good, because Toby Hooper pays attention to continuity like I do. He's worried, they were worried that the shirt was going to come out a different color and it wouldn't match the rest of the film they shot so far. So he couldn't, he wore the same shirt and the same clothing the entire time they were shooting. And people just didn't even want to sit near him because of how bad he smelled. Just the dinner scene, like, is such an amazing scene, man. Like, that is so intense. We'll talk about it when we get there, but same thing. Like, all the meat and the food that they were leaving on the table for just a few hours would start going bad and start smelling terribly. People would be, the crew and actors would go outside the house and puke and then come back in like, nah, I'm good, man. Just have to get some of that out. Like, it's crazy what some of these iconic classic horror movies, like what the actors and the crew and everyone had to deal with to get these movies made. But they do. And you could see it in the movies. You can see it in this movie. Like, the heat, you can feel the heat, like, through this movie. I love about this movie how most of it's in the daytime. Like, you don't see that much in horror movies. Like, a little more so maybe today, but it's not a common thing. This movie is mostly in the daytime. And I mean, Jim Sidow's performance is incredible in this movie. So is Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker. So is Gunnar Hansen. So is Marilyn Burns. Like everyone does a phenomenal job in this movie. And I think that it also helps, which it helps with a lot of horror films. It adds to that realism because these were all unknown for the most part, like actors and stuff back then. Like nobody knew any of the kids, like the main group of friends, and that adds to the realism. Like it's not like trying to can't I don't want to harp on that movie. It's like casting really famous actors in a horror movie. It's really hard to not see that actor. But with a lot of horror films, and especially ones from the 70s, 80s, most of them were unknown because it was much cheaper to make. You didn't have to worry about getting popular actors or anything like that. And I feel like that added to like horror movies. You don't see it as much today. Like now you see some bigger names and stuff in horror movies. I'm not saying that you can't, they're acting. They're playing a character. So of course you can put it out of your head if you need to. But like when you have a movie with like big stars, then it becomes kind of hard for me at least. But the realism in this movie and just the imagery, like Toby Hooper is amazing with that. With just the feeling of dread and decay and just death like everywhere. Like the cinematography in this movie is absolutely fantastic. The feel to it is like again it's so grimy and dirty. It's like if he filmed the movie and then took all the film and like just rubbed it around and to get it dirty and grimy, then release the movie. Like that's how this movie looks and feels to me. And it's been a while since I've seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so this will be fun. So let's talk Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. All right, first of all, the whole beginning text narration here is iconic. And I can't believe I can't remember the guy's name. I remembered it when I did the remake months ago. Can't remember it now at 7 a.m. But iconic. Like his voice is iconic, and I'm so glad they got him back to do the narration for the remake. Which, if you don't know, the remake I think is the best remake out of all of the major slasher franchises. Friday, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street's abysmal. Child's Play, no, it's Texas Chainsaw all three. But just the whole beginning text with like which led to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Fucking great. So good. And then just the opening shots of just the camera flash lighting up and you're seeing just all this decrepit shit and just like death everywhere. Like he has such a knack for just visual imagery, Hooper, and it really shows in this movie. Like I think that's one of the best things that this movie has going for it that was never captured in any of the films after this. And I'm not a big Texas Chainsaw fan. Like I'm really not. Like I think this is a masterpiece. The second one's my favorite in the franchise. I adore it. The third one's decent. Has Ken Foree and some cool stuff in it. I remember it being a lot darker of a movie. That's pretty much it. Besides the remake, which I think is fantastic. I haven't liked the Texas Chainsaw since like the beginning, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, the movie. I haven't enjoyed one since then. So that says a lot for how I feel about this franchise. But the whole fact that this movie too, first of all, led to it started the whole, you know, power tools killer thing that we saw a lot not a lot, but a decent amount in the late 70s and early 80s, like with the driller killer and the toolbox murders and all that type of stuff. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like that's what started it. And just you don't see too many chainsaw wielding killers in movies. And I think that's just being afraid of being compared to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and being compared to Leatherface. Like if you start have a new slasher movie and all he uses the killer is a chainsaw, you're going to get comparisons. Like absolutely. So that I don't know. I've always seen that as maybe a reason for why you don't see chainsaws used that much, like in slasher movies, like as the sole weapon. Only thing I can think of off the top of my head is Pieces, and I adore that movie. So it gets a pass. It's definitely its own thing, but even that, was inspired by this. But besides the whole power tools thing, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, the fact that this movie, as well as two others, Silence of the Lambs and Psycho, were all based off of Ed Gein, the serial killer. He wasn't really even a serial killer. What did he kill? Like two people? He was a grave robber, I know that. But like all the imagery that we see in the house in this movie, like with the couches made out of human bones and skin lamps, and all of that is actual like stuff that they found in Gein's house, which is fucking frightening. But the fact that this guy, Ed Gein, this evil fucker, basically was the inspiration for Norman Bates, Hannibal Lecter, and Leatherface. That most positive thing to come out of his existence. Let's just put it that way. Oh, and every time the opening narration, when it says a group of five youths, I always think of my cousin Vinny. The two what? The two youths? That is such a great movie, man. No, the two youths. What youth? What's a youth? Oh, the two youths. And then he looks at the judge. Like, and then the two defendants. That's such a great movie, man. My Cousin Vinny, classic. But I can't hear that. I can't hear Group of Five Youths without thinking of that movie. Like every time I watch this, which has been a while. I'm trying to think, but they don't ever say why Franklin's in a wheelchair, right? I know he's been in it probably since birth, because I know there's a line from, oh, what the hell's her name? I always forget the other girl's name. Not Sally, obviously the other one. But she says a line later in the movie, if I recall correctly, of saying that like they had to carry Franklin like down to the where they went swimming in like the water or the creek or whatever he says is nearby. Pretty sure I remember that. So he's been in this wheelchair at least since he was a young kid, if not probably birth. I don't think they ever say why though. Not that it's important, just something I was thinking of. And I love her, not Sally, other one I can never remember her name. Talking about Saturn being in retrograde and like all of that. Like this whole beginning, the whole movie, but this whole beginning, like the dialogue between all of them, it feels genuine. It feels real. And that just adds, like I was saying, to the realism of this movie. It just feels like normal people. Like they don't feel like actors. Like that's how well they did in this movie. They don't seem like actors. They seem like just regular people. Regular young adults that are just driving through Texas. Like that's how they feel. And I know they go to check out their grandparents' gravestone where he's buried. And it's the same place that the hitchhiker, if I remember, was the one that was digging up the bodies. Yeah, because whatchamacallit, Mr. Sawyer says to him, like, I told you to stay away from that graveyard, or something like that a little later in the movie. So the hitchhiker is the one that's been robbing these graves. So they go and check to see if their grandfather's grave was disturbed, which it wasn't, or at least it seems like. Sally says that it didn't look like he was dug up. Now, the whole thing, let's talk about Franklin's character first. I know a lot of people who do not like Franklin. And yeah, he is annoying at times. But bitch, I mean, he's in a wheelchair. Like, I'd be pissed too. Like, a lot of the time, man. Cut him some slack. But I think he's a cool character. I think he's not that relatable, like for me at least. But I don't know. I always saw him as like a big teddy bear. Like he wouldn't harm a fly. This guy, like he's just a nice dude. Yeah, he can be annoying a little bit, but at the same time, like they leave him in a little bit to go upstairs in the house, knowing he can't get up there because of his wheelchair, and he feels forgotten a lot of the times, and or just not cared for, or not being paid attention to. So I understand that. So I don't know what people's general consensus is on Franklin. All I know is that I've heard many times that they can't stand his character. I think he's fine. And his whole talk with the slaughterhouse and how they used to kill him with the hammers and stuff, and then they started using the retractable compressed air can and everything. Love all that dialogue. And see, like right here too is like why it almost feels like a documentary. Like when he's talking about all that, they intersplice like little shots of cows and everything. Like just the way that Hooper shot this is, I think, so innovative. Was like the first of its kind for many things, and it's just visually amazing slash disturbing to watch this whole movie play out. Like God, I can't praise him enough with the look of this movie, which, like I said, is one of the biggest things for me that this movie has is just the feel and just the feeling of decay and death everywhere and bones and human skin and remains. All of those visuals that we get in this movie, especially when they go into the house and start looking around, is done so well. Like, absolutely adore that. All right, now the whole reason I brought up Franklin. Now, there's a quick little thing after the hitchhiker, after they kick him out of the car, and he's kicking the car, and he's going at the car. Now later on, when they get to the house, their grandfather's house, or their father, I forgot who owns it. I think it's the grandfather. But when they go to the house, then Franklin has that whole little meltdown, for lack of a better term, of him like looking upstairs where the rest of them are, and doing the long, and this is where I could see him being annoying with the over and over again. Now, is there supposed to be a connection there? Is he mocking the hitchhiker? Did he see and hear the hitchhiker do that? Like, I always thought it would be very interesting in this series if somehow they went back and made it like a sequel direct to this one. Not like the last movie we got, which was a sequel to this. That was terrible. But going back and exploring the possibility of Franklin and Sally being related in some way to the Sawyers. Like that I would get behind. Like that type of idea, like if it was written right, that's something I could see. Like being explored and being very interesting. Because I don't think that from watching this, but just seeing him do that same, like, I don't know how to describe it, so I just got to do it. The fart sound with his tongue, I don't like saying that. It's better to just do it. Because it's like a familial, like, type trait between him and the hitchhiker. Like, the hitchhiker does it, he does it. It's seemingly unrelated. But I don't know if he's just, if he's just mockingly doing what the hitchhiker did. Or not. If not, that's my whole basis there of making a movie like that. Explore the possibility that maybe, I mean, their family's from right around here. They go to the dad or grandfather's house. So you can make that movie. You can write a script like that of them finding out that they're related to the Sawyers, and that the Saw is family. To quote part two. But that's a cool idea that they could explore. I mean, I'm taking all this just from a that's repeated from the hitchhiker and then repeated by Franklin. But there's an in right there. Somebody work on that script, is what I'm saying. And the whole portrayal of the hitchhiker by Edwin Neal is excellent in this movie. Like, he's such a disturbing character. I think they explained in like a later movie that he was like schizophrenic or paranoid schizo, something like that. But whatever he is, he plays it amazingly. Such a good job in this. I love the look of him with the birthmark or whatever that is on his face. I think it's a birthmark. And when he cuts his hand, dude, it looks so good. Like for one shot of with no cut of him cutting into his hand, it looks really good. Like, not hard to do, but it looks very good how they did it and how he shot it. Awesome stuff. And then, like, this is the only time that I think any of them overacts a little bit, and it's Franklin when he's looking at him cutting himself, and he's like freaking out with his face. I mean, it's a little hokey, it's a little over the top. But if that's the only complaint I have from the acting in this movie, it shows how good the acting is. Like, the acting is not praised enough in this movie. Maybe because it just, like I said, it feels so realistic. And, like, it doesn't feel like they're actors. So maybe people don't pay enough attention to the acting. But it's excellent. And he just does such a good job as a hitchhiker. And then just freaking Franklin out even more, and pulling out his switchblade and like, I got this knife, you want to hold it? And the friend's like, no, I'm good, man. I'm sure it's a good knife. Like, I love all that. And then when he takes the picture, and then he shows it to Franklin, he tries hustling him. He's like, it's a good picture, $2. Man, I've seen that shit all over. Like, all the places I've traveled that has tourism and stuff like that, that's what they do. They come up and take a picture of you, then have you hold it and look at it, and be like, it's nice, $10. It's like, no, I'm good, yo. I didn't ask you to take my fucking picture. Get out of here. That's my answer usually. That's what Franklin should have done. But then the whole thing with him, like, exploding the picture, as Franklin says, when he puts gunpowder or whatever it is on the picture, and then just lets it just go ablaze and stuff. I mean, that's what freaks him out and puts him over the edge. Him cutting himself, cutting his hand, right then and there would be me. All right, you got to get out. Like, something isn't right with you. I get it. They just picked this guy up. They don't know him at all. So, like, they're weary about telling him to get out. I would be too. But that would be the thing that tells him to get out, not burning a photograph. No, it'd be cutting his hand open. That would be the one. Then he takes his switchblade and he cuts Franklin's arm. Poor guy, man. I feel bad for Franklin. Fuck you, Franklin haters. I like Franklin. I've decided. It's been settled. I like Franklin. I feel bad for the guy. He's in a wheelchair. Now he has to get fucking sliced his arm open. That sucks. And then I just saw the shot. So he sees the hitchhiker do that. Because it has the shot of the hitchhiker, then him doing then the shot of Franklin, and then back to the hitchhiker. So Franklin sees him doing this. Don't mess up on me, camera. All right, we're good. So it is probably him just mocking what the hitchhiker did later. But still, good idea. You can link them together like that. Say it's just a thing. You know how you inherit stupid little things from your family and your parents especially? Get on that fucking script, guys. Man, those, whatchamacallit, horoscopes that she's reading for Franklin and then for Jerry, they are eerily correct. Like, they are so close to what happened. Like, it might as well just say, you're going to be murdered today. Don't leave home. Because that's basically what they're saying. Like, for Franklin and for Jerry. Like, one of them says you might feel like you're in a dream. Like, pinch yourself and find out you're not. Like, it's very good foreshadowing. But, like, if I was the characters hearing that, I'd go lock myself in a room somewhere for the day. Because it doesn't sound like anything good is in my horoscope. Okay, it's the father owns the house. Franklin is Sally's father. It's not the grandfather. I don't know why I was thinking grandpa. Oh, because the grandfather's buried in the cemetery. That's why I probably confused it. But yeah, so it's the father's house. And that's right, because doesn't Sally say, like, the wallpaper with the animals, that she used to talk to them and stuff? Yeah, so, like, they spent a lot of time there, at least. Pre-AIDS in the 70s, when you can just look at someone else's blood on a knife and pass it to a friend. Does that look like blood? Yeah, it does. And like no care in the world. Better times, man. And I would love one of those Coca-Cola machines. One of the old Coke machines. That's so cool. Something about like antiques and old shit. Always liked them. So I want that Coke machine is what I'm saying. Somebody get online, find an old vintage 60s/70s Coke machine. Send it my way. No, yeah, see, because now Franklin just said we're going to Grandpa's place. So is it Grandpa's place or is it the father's? I'm guessing the father owns it, and it was the Grandpa's house. And that would make sense of why she was spending so much time there. They used to be there all the time, and she makes that comment about the wallpaper because it was a grandfather's house. So I'm guessing it was a grandfather's house, but her father just owns it now. That's what I'm guessing from it. Man, seeing the hitchhiker scene in this, and then probably doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 after this, and gonna see Chop Top and Bill Moseley. Man, I hope one day we get All American Massacre released finally. If anyone doesn't know what that is, it's pretty much like the lost Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. It was basically a spin-off that followed Chop Top from part two. And Bill Moseley was in it. It was directed by Tony Hooper, Toby's son. And I think it was the late 90s, 98, 99, they filmed it. And it still hasn't come out. Like, there was a trailer for it. They filmed most of it, if not all of it. And it was supposed to be Bill Moseley as Chop Top, obviously, in prison, and him recounting, like, his murders and, like, all his previous massacres and stuff. It looks really good from, like, the trailer that's still up on YouTube, probably. I don't remember the last time I saw it, a few years ago. They usually don't take stuff like that down. And there you can find other, like, bits and pieces here and there. But man, I've been wanting to see that movie. I would love to see that movie. Just to see Bill Moseley as Chop Top again, like in a movie, would be awesome. But he plays the now he I forgot who it is. Who plays the guy who does the effects work there in that movie. He also played a young version of Chop Top and a young version of the Hitchhiker. It'd be awesome to get that movie finally. I love when when Franklin and Kirk are looking at the blood that the hitchhiker smeared on the van, and he's so like interested in it and engrossed by it, and then he asks Kirk, like, "Do you think the guy's following us or anything like that?" But before that, Kirk is going with the rag to like wash the blood off to wipe it off, and then Franklin's like, "No, hold on, wait a minute, wait a minute." And then Kirk just get, all right, you wipe it off, and he gives him the thing to wipe it. I love that. But yeah, that's screwed up, man. You got your brother, as Sally, her brother Franklin downstairs, who's paralyzed in a wheelchair. And not just she don't care, all of them go upstairs and leave him down there. I mean, that is a dick move. Like, I know they're not doing it purposely, obviously, but you gotta take it from, Franklin's point of view. Wear his shoes, okay? You don't might not want to because your legs won't work, but try it for a second. He has every right to be pissed and annoyed and all the emotions that he's showing here. If I have any more fun today, I don't think I'm going to be able to take it. Pam, that's her name, the other girl. Pam and Kirk asked Franklin where they used to go swimming, and he says it's between the two sheds, and they go walking, and that's when she says the line, saying that, like, how did Franklin get down here when he was a kid? And he says, like, he was always big or something, and said that, like, someone had to carry him. But yeah, man, all the outdoor scenes, you can just feel the heat radiating off of this movie. Like, man, it must have been hot as shit. Like, I think they said in, like, an interview with Hooper or somebody else that it was, like, 115 on some days. Like, that's insane, man. To be shooting a movie like this in 115-degree weather. But it reminds me of The Thing, my favorite movie. How you could feel the cold coming off of that movie. Opposite here. You could feel the heat just radiate from this movie when you watch it. And the house, man, how iconic is the Sawyer house? Like, They've changed it in every movie. But continuity's never been a thing with this series either. But what an iconic house. Like up there with like that Norman Bates' house in the Bates Motel. Like almost at that level. Like almost everybody knows this house. If they just saw a picture of the house from here, this movie, instantly Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Like what a cool, creepy fucking house, man. Kirk thinks it's all in good fun, finding a human tooth on the floor and just dropping in his girlfriend's hand. And doesn't expect to get at least get slapped, and he doesn't. But she had every right to smack him right there. Are you serious? Don't put a fucking nasty ass tooth in my hand. Are you serious? If anyone hasn't seen the fan film, the unofficial prequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Sawyer Massacre, it's either the Sawyer Massacre or the Sawyer Family Massacre. Whatever. It's on YouTube. Very good. For a fan film, it's very, very good. Like, probably my fourth favorite in the franchise. After this, part two, and the remake. Like, it was really good. I should rewatch. I might do a video on that. Because that is a good unofficial prequel to this movie. And what an iconic scene this is. Like, when Kirk hears the pig squealing and he runs to the back room and he trips, and then Leatherface is there and he's squealing like a pig and he hits him with the mallet on the head, and just the way he starts seizuring up on the floor and stuff and his body's just shaking violently. That looks so good. That looks so authentic. Because like if you get hit on the head like that hard enough, like parts of your brain, your fucking skull fragments and stuff are gonna go into your brain. And that's what would happen. Like, it's so good looking. And then he just moves his body out of the way and just slams the door shut. What an iconic scene. And that's another thing with this movie. I love how Hooper and Henkel leave everything up to suggestion for the most part. This isn't a violent movie. Like, anything that you think you saw, you didn't really see. Like, I know so many people who've only seen this movie once or twice and think and remember it as being like this ultra violent, like gory movie. And there's no blood in this movie, hardly at all. You see a little bit on Kirk's body after he gets malleted in the head, and maybe like a little bit of blood here and there, like hardly at all. That's it. Like, you don't see anything. You don't see a chainsaw go into anybody. Nothing like that. But the way that it's filmed, man, like, it's. I think I said this in my Psycho video for the shower scene. How perfectly shot and edited that is. How you feel like you see the knife stabbing her over and over again. But you never see the knife enter her skin at all. Same with this movie. Like the suggestive power that the way that this movie is shot is brilliant. Like, it really does make you think that you've seen stuff in this movie. And like when she gets put on the hook, Pam, like, you feel that. Like, you really feel the hook go into her. Like, it's like, oh God, and you don't see anything. That's so effective. Like, that scene is a great scene. But there's a lot of that in this movie. And it's so good. Like, what a great job at leaving it to the viewer's mind and letting them fill in the blanks. Because it works so fucking well in this movie. I love the shot when Pam goes in with the chicken in the cage and the couch that has like the armrests or the human arm bones and everything. And just like the human skulls everywhere, and that's what I mean. Just the imagery that Hooper uses in this movie is absolutely excellent. Like, everything, just all the remains of bodies and bone everywhere, and you have like the turtle shell that's like hanging, like real creative. Like, with a lot of this stuff, even though I said like a lot of it was like kind of replicating what they found in Ed Gein's house. But damn, man, like, the set dressing in this movie is phenomenal. Like, everything in this house, like, it looks so just nasty and decrepit and just someplace you would never want to be, like ever. And it's just, it looks so good. It looks so real, man. Like it really does look almost like a documentary, the way that it was filmed. Just with that graininess. Like this is a movie that you do not want. Someone was bringing this up to me recently, semi recently, about like what movies you wouldn't want like to have a 4K release or like Blu-ray or upgrading, transfers and stuff, like what movies would be hurt by it. This one, absolutely. The Texas Chain Saw Massacre is not a movie that you want a 4K version of. Like it's going to take away that griminess, that grittiness to the film. Like that this is a film that is going to keep being hurt the better and better transfers that they make of this. Like same with found footage. That whole subgenre for the most part. It's supposed to be VHS tapes, like found footage and stuff. You don't want to keep cleaning those movies up until it doesn't look like it's being recorded on a camera. Like I don't know. You get what I mean? Like some people don't agree with that, and that's fine. But for me, yeah, there's just some movies you don't want to clean up, like too much, and this is one of them for sure. Oh yeah, man. When Leatherface puts her on the hook, damn, is she good with her acting right there. Like she really sells that pain. Like just the way it's shot of her being put on the meat hook, and then just her dropping a little bit and hanging on it. Then just her screams and agony. It looks so good. Then Leatherface just proceeds to chop off Kirk's head. I mean, you don't see it or anything, but that's where he's going with the saw, is on it, like by his head. So he's cutting his head off. Man, such a good scene. The sound design in this movie, too, is excellent. Like, something just about a chainsaw running plus screams, like blood-curdling screams on top of it. Like from Sally especially, like in the ending of the movie. Any type of screams put over a sound of a revving chainsaw just immediately makes it sound so much more chaotic and visceral and crazy than without the chainsaw. So, I mean, what a great idea, man. To have just this guy who wears the skin of his victims running around killing people with a chainsaw. Because, I mean, when you think about it, you have someone chasing you with a knife. Yeah, they can miss. You can get it out of their hand. And with a gun, same thing. If someone was running after me with a fucking chainsaw, that's got to be the scariest thing to be chased with. Like, of all, like, killing implements, chainsaw. Are you serious? Like, that thing will maul you to death. Cut through you like you're butter. That's terrifying. Like, who wants to be attacked with a chainsaw? Nobody. I mean, who wants to be attacked at all? No one. But compared to a knife or like a machete or a pickaxe or anything like that, chainsaw wins. Like, I see someone with a chainsaw, I'm getting the fuck out of there. And I love the shot of Jerry when he goes into the house looking for the other two, and when he walks into the room or the hallway, whatever, like into the meat hook kitchen, the kitchen with the meat hooks hanging, where Leatherface shut the door earlier, where he slams the door shut, the red wall. I love how that looks with all the animal skulls and everything on it. That looks so good. Man, imagine not just opening a freezer and finding your friend in there and not knowing what the hell's going on, but then proceed to get smashed in the face with a fucking mallet. Oh, that's gotta suck, man. Now let's talk about Leatherface's masks and his whole look in this movie. The best Leatherface. Like, hands down. Like, even though 2 is my favorite in the series, I don't like Leatherface in 2 compared to this. Like, this is just the best looking Leatherface. I mean, it's the original. Most of the time, the original is the best. Because then you have nothing to compare it to. Just look at Michael Myers. My favorite mask in John Carpenter's Halloween. My favorite Michael Myers, Nick Castle. I mean, Dick Warlock comes close. And Wilbur, comes close too, which he just died. Rest in peace. That sucks. But he looks so good in this movie, Leatherface. Like I like him in the remake, but like he's like, isn't he a wrestler in the remake? The guy who plays him, he's fucking huge in the remake, and they shoot and frame him perfectly in that. But the masks, this movie, as the best all masks, like not just his normal killing one that we see most of the movie here, but his dinner time made up one, like all of them look the best in this movie. I like when now it's the little bit of nighttime we see in this movie, but I love when Franklin and Sally are arguing over going to find the friends, and I just love their whole little sibling banter and their whole little argument about like him just wanting the flashlight and I'll come with you, and she's saying I can't put you down that hill, like, and just them like exploding on each other. But they're brother and sister, so they probably do the shit all the time. But for some reason, I like that whole scene. And the way it's all shot, all the night shots here, with until we see Leatherface attack Franklin, the lighting is great. Like the shots of the moon is great. Like all of those, like this whole movie is a masterpiece. Like I said, so I can't like go on every little detail, but God, the way that Hooper shot this whole film is unbelievable, especially for the time that it came out, like in the early 70s. Like, you can definitely see why this movie was just a landmark for horror. Like, I always quote A Bay of Blood by Mario Bava as being like the first slasher film that would mold and shape what we know now as the slasher genre. I think it influenced this. I think it influenced Friday the 13th for sure. And Halloween. Like, even if, because I know a lot of people with the whole slasher genre, when was the first slasher movie? People quote Psycho. I don't think Psycho's a slasher film. I don't. I think it's a great character study. It's not a slasher film. I could see the influence that it had, but it's not a slasher. Same with this. Like, you can't deny the influence that this movie had on horror in general, but on the slasher genre that was soon to come. But again, not a slasher for me. This is just a film all on its own. Like I said, same with Halloween. Like, as I don't consider that a slasher film. The sequels, yes. Same kind of with this. Maybe it's just a little different for me because you use a chainsaw all the time. And for some reason that, for me, doesn't qualify as a slasher. But, I don't know, it's its own thing. Texas Chainsaw, the original. And I've never put it in the whole slasher category. Oh, poor Franklin, man. It's sad seeing him get killed every time. But, again, you don't see anything. But it's the way it's lit. It's the specific way that it's shot. Just all of it is so masterfully done here. Like, you just see from behind Franklin. And you see him get sliced, like, presumably in half. Or at least, like, almost in half. And then you see him kind of, like, sawing at, like, his head area. But you can't see exactly what's going on. Now, when we see Franklin's corpse in part 2, I forget now if it's just the wheelchair or his whole body, like his skeleton. I'll save that for then. But so sad seeing Franklin die. In the last half hour of this movie has to be some of the most just crazy, visceral, raw, disturbing shit in a movie ending ever, maybe. Like, definitely top 10 of the most disturbing, craziest, chaotic endings to a horror movie. Yeah, I'd say top 10. And I'll say this, man. Marilyn Burns as Sally, she screams her ass off in this movie. Like, this whole last half hour, she is screaming almost nonstop. Like, her fucking vocal cords, her voice had to have given out at some point, like, while filming. And her screams are so authentic sounding. Like, she sounds like she's being chased by a chainsaw-wielding killer. She sounds like she's tied up to a fucking bone chair at dinner with this cannibalistic family. Like, she does such a great job in this movie. But episode, especially with her screams. Like, they are blood curdling. They are so piercing. It's hard not to, like, again, like, it feels so authentic. It's really amazing. And the way, first of all, the way Grandpa looks is fantastic. The makeup on him and just the whole inclusion of Grandpa is great. Like, we see him in a few of these movies, but he looks the best in this. And just the fact of, what do they say? He's like 137 years old or something like that. And he's still with the family. He's still alive somehow. So I don't know how that works, because there's no supernatural stuff in this movie or series at all. So I don't know if he's really 137. He's probably just real fucking old. And they just say, all right, this is how old you are now. Because then we see the grandma's corpse, and she's very dead. With her skeleton and everything. That looks great. Like, man, it looks so realistic. Like, just the grandma's skull corpse. It looks so good. Then we have Sally runs to the gas station and runs it to Drake Sawyer. And I remember Sydow saying in an interview that he was very hesitant with, like, beating up on Marilyn Burns. And they just had to, like, keep telling him, like, no, really go, like, at it. Like, really start hitting her, because it looks fake. And then he had to just, like, put all that aside and jump into Drake Sawyer mode, and then really started, like, hitting her. Like, she had, like, a lot of bruises and shit from this movie. You know what I also think adds to the feel of this movie and makes it feel so raw and gritty and dark and atmospheric and like a documentary? There's no music in this. There's no score in this movie that I can recall, or that I've seen so far. I've seen this movie so many times. There's no score to this. Like, the only music we hear is like the music playing in, like, the gas station or, like, in their car. Just generic stock music. That's it. So maybe that's a big reason with why it's so effective at being so realistic looking. Is there's no music really throughout this whole movie, which I never really thought about until just now. I love the phrase "little coon shits." Drayton Sawyer says. Drayton Sawyer. Did I say Drake earlier? I don't know why I confuse his name, Drayton, with Drake or Dayton. Now I can't remember his name. It's Drayton Sawyer, right? I don't know if they ever even call him by name in this one. I know in the second one they do. I don't know if they do. I'm pretty sure it's Drayton Sawyer. But goddamn, man, Sidehouse does such a great job in this. Like, sucked when he passed away. And I don't know if that's why, like, I said it in my video for the remake, which I did a long while ago. So this is like one of the few franchises that I did the remake first. Like, and I said in that video, I don't know if I would say I prefer the remake. Like, I don't think it's as masterful as a film as the original. But I do find myself watching the remake more often than the original. So I don't know what that says, but I do watch it more often than this film here. But R. Lee Ermey's performance is a huge reason the remake is so great for me. Like, R. Lee Ermey kills it in that movie. I think, and God forbid, strike me down, blasphemy, but I feel like R. Lee Ermey's performance in that movie is better than Sidehouse here. I don't know. Just how I've always felt since I've seen the remake. Like, R. Lee Ermey was perfect to play part of the family. And he just absolutely destroys that role. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've said a few times, Sidow's amazing here. But I don't know. R. Lee Ermey versus Sidow? That would be a fight I'd pay to see. Yeah, this one, Drayton's beating the shit out of, isn't his name Nubbins? The hitchhiker? Pretty sure they mention it in 2. I don't know where I'm getting that from, if it's not. So I'm pretty sure his name is Nubbins, his real name. But the hitchhiker, I think, is what he's even credited as in this movie. But I love when Drayton's beating the shit out of him and smacking him like crazy and saying, like, I told you to stay away from that graveyard. And yeah, he does say it. So he's the one that's been robbing the graveyard. Why? I'm guessing just for decorations and shit. Because they eat people. Drayton makes the best barbecue in the state of Texas. So they would need fresh meat for that. Like, not like decayed old fucking bodies in the ground. So I'm guessing they just robbed it, were robbing graves for what? Just for if they had possessions? Because you know these people ain't paying taxes or anything like that. So just for that and just for the remains, I'm guessing they never elaborate on it. I love when they bring her in and sit her down at the dinner table. I mean, this whole dinner scene is fan fucking tastic. Fan fucking tastic. Almost a tactic. Fan fucking tastic. Like, so good. And I love Leatherface's mask, like the woman mask and stuff that he's wearing. You don't expect to see that the first time you see this movie. Like, guy with a chainsaw running around chasing people and cutting them up is enough. You don't expect to see the guy in like a woman's skin mask. And I think that it's great. Like, what a cool idea that is. That he kind of takes over, he kind of takes the personality of the mask that he's wearing. And like, this is dinner time, so he's supposed to look all nice and made up. So he puts on a different mask. Awesome. Like, I love that whole idea and concept. I love this one little quick shot, like this Dutch angle, and you can see like the skeleton, like a skeleton in the foreground, and it's showing Sally sitting there, and then you hear them bringing Grandpa down the stairs. That's such a cool shot right there. But yeah, I love when they take her mask, her not mask, but like sack off her head in the house, and the first thing she sees is the hitchhiker, and starts freaking out. Like, that's awesome. Then they bring Grandpa down, and they like fucking stick a knife and make a pinch of blood so she could suck on it, like he could suck on her finger. That's so disturbing. And her eyes, man, the way she's like just her eyes are wide open, like in terror. Oh, the whole way this scene is shot, the whole dinner scene is excellent. Oh, and what great shots these are when it shows the moon and then it comes back inside and she comes to or starts screaming again when she's has her hands tied to the hands, the fucking human arms that are the armchairs. They're literal armchairs. And then they shoot and show the rest of the family all sitting down at the dinner table. That's so good. That's so good. Looks so good. Shut up, you little bitch hog. I love some of the terms that Drayton uses here. And I like how Drayton here says that he can't take pleasure in killing. When him and the hitchhiker are bitching about, the hitchhiker saying, we do all the work here. And he says, I don't take pleasure in killing. It's like, it has to be done, but it doesn't mean you have to take pleasure in it. So he's like the odd one out. Like, he doesn't love killing. Like, well, I don't know about the hitchhiker. We don't see him kill anyone in this movie. But like Leatherface. And I'm guessing the hitchhiker too. I mean, the guy's a fucking maniac. He definitely loves killing. Drayton's not that way. It kind of reminds me of Captain Spaulding in House of a Thousand Corpses, more in The Devil's Rejects. He doesn't seem to like be interested in all the crazy killing and psychotic behavior that the Fireflies are into. Like Otis is totally like a huge killer. Like he lives for that. Same with Baby. She's trying to party and have a good time killing people. Spaulding doesn't seem to like killing. And that reminded me of this. When I first saw House of a Thousand Corpses, reminds me of the same type of thing. Like Drayton doesn't love killing. Like it's not his thing. He loves making the meat and barbecue out of the deceased. Such great shots and camera work and editing in this scene before Grandpa tries to take a whack at Sally. Just on her eyes, they have like a whole bunch of quick shots of her eyes and her face moving from different directions. So chaotic looking, it's so great. Man, the whole scene with Grandpa with the mallet is so intense. Like still, and this 50 years this movie was made. 50 years ago. I mean, it was filmed in '73, so it didn't come out until the next year. But 50 years since Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Wow, I just realized that now. That's crazy. It's such an intense scene, though. Like 50 years later, it's so effective. Just them all screaming and yelling, and him, the grandpa, he keeps dropping the mallet, and he has to pick it up and put it back in his hand, and he's trying to whack her, and it keeps falling out, and she's screaming bloody murder. Like, oh, it's so intense. It's so just visceral and evil, and it comes across so great in this movie. Like, writing the whole role of grandpa into this movie, it would be missing without grandpa here. Like, I feel like the film would be missing something without grandpa. Like, that scene right there is so fucking good, so effective, so scary. Like, putting yourself in her shoes, it's fine, she can run and walk. Being in Sally's shoes, I can't imagine how terrifying that is. And then she gets free and she jumps through the window, and then just the daylight again. Like, most of this movie, like I said, is in the daytime, which is awesome. Cool when the hitchhiker gets hit by the truck, but I mean, he has a good 4 seconds or so that he's just going, standing in front of the truck. All he had to do was jump out of the way. He would have been fine. But he gets run over, he's killed. And I'm guessing that's the scene I said earlier when he was had to the actor Neil felt his fucking skin cooking on the asphalt on the concrete. Man, that sucks. They didn't even use it, and he had to go through all that shit. Man, this truck driver must be, what the fuck did I just come into? Like, what did I just drive into? Just seeing this guy with a chainsaw and a suit with a makeup on a human skin mask and this bloodied up girl, and then that's right, he throws a rock or something at Leatherface and he falls, and that's the only time we see a chainsaw enter human skin, like break skin in this movie, is when he drops the chainsaw on his leg and you see a little bit of blood and shit come out of him. That's basically it. But God, this truck driver must be dreading that he ever stopped. And then just the end, man, with Marilyn Burns' performance at the end here, of just laughing insanely, like she is broken. Like, she is so broken, you know she's going to a mental asylum. And that's how I say that with so many slasher movies, even though I don't consider this a slasher. You know what I'm talking about. 99% of the time, that's what's happening. They're mentally breaking down the survivor, final girl, whatever you want to call them, and they're ending up in a mental institution. Like, after going through something like this, like, are you serious? I mean, at the least heavily medicated, if not asylum. The way that she portrays just insanity at the end here, so well done. Like, it's so good. Like, she really, like, what an effective ending. She gave her all for this whole movie. But man, I love that ending with her just cackling maniacally with a broken mind. Just totally insane from what she just had to live through. And she does live. But man, I don't know if I'd want to live with the memories of this the rest of your life. She's young. She's going to presumably live a long time. Like, unless you take into the fact that the last movie exists and she's killed by Leatherface, which, how terrible that movie was, that sequel. But then we have Leatherface just twirling his chainsaw around and looks pissed, and he starts doing it at the end of every movie, except for the second one. We have Stretch do that in the second one, but what a fucking masterpiece this movie is. Like, every time I watch it, I gain a little more appreciation for it, even though I've thought this movie was a masterpiece since I've seen it. Again, though, it's not a favorite of mine. It's one of those few movies that I consider a masterpiece, but I don't throw it on too often, and it's not like a favorite of mine. But God, it's so good, and it kick-started a lot of things in horror. It did so much for horror, as a genre, and just in had a big hand in helping with the slasher craze that would come if half a decade later. What a great film, man. Like this kind of makes me want to go through Toby Hooper's like entire filmography, like eventually, and like see all the movies of his that I never really got into or saw. Eaten Alive is good. I've seen that. Poltergeist, obviously. The Fun House is. I love The Fun House. That's a great movie that is not talked about enough. That's a film I got to cover soon. And I can't think of many other Toby Hooper films off the top of my head. But I do got to see more. Obviously, Texas Chainsaw 2 is Toby Hooper, which what a risk to take after this movie. And I love that about this movie too, is that this was before the 80s and the whole franchise thing started with all the big slashers. We kept getting more and more installments year after year, almost some of them. This movie went a good 12, 13 years or so, right? Yeah, before it got a sequel with part two. Like, one, that's fucking restraint. And two, just the risk Hooper took with part two. Like, the second movie is so much more comedic. Like, it's a dark comedy in my eyes. That was a huge risk to take. After this first movie, and having it being so visceral and just grimy and grainy looking, and all of those things I mentioned, for him to go 12 years later and make a sequel that is so different. I commend that with any director or filmmaker or anything like that who will take a big risk, even if it doesn't work all the time. But for me, it worked 100% because I love the second movie, obviously, as I've stated, best in the series for me. But that's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, man. Absolute classic, and I will probably have two out by tonight. I'm being generous with myself. But yeah, amazing. I don't know if I'm going to do the whole series like now. I don't know if I want to sit through all the ones after the remake. But yeah, just wherever you guys are from, hoping you're having a good morning or night. And camera will fuck up on me soon, so take care.